For 20 years, my father told me I would never amount to anything. Not once. Not in a moment of anger that he later regretted. 20 years. Consistently, repeatedly, in front of other people and alone, in quiet voices and in loud ones. The message was always the same. You are not enough. You will not be enough. Don't bother trying. My name is Melissa, and last Thanksgiving, my father stood up at a table of 14 people and told them all how proud he was of everything I had accomplished. He talked for 4 minutes. He cried at the end. I let him finish. Then I said 8 words that I had been saving for 20 years. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My father's name is Robert. He is 64 years old, and he is, in many ways, a man who was never taught how to love without conditions. I understand that now. I did not understand it when I was 9 years old, and he told me, in front of my mother and my 2 brothers, that I was the least impressive person in our family. I was 9. I had just showed him a drawing I was proud of. He looked at it for 3 seconds and said that. My mother said nothing. She had learned not to. My brothers, older by 4 and 6 years, had learned to orbit my father at a safe distance. They agreed with him when it was necessary. They laughed when he made jokes at my expense. They were not cruel, exactly. They were surviving, the way people survive in households where one person controls the emotional weather. But their survival required my sacrifice, and I think they knew it, and I think they have been living with that ever since. I was the youngest. I was the only daughter. And for reasons I spent years in therapy trying to understand, I was the one my father chose to diminish. The examples are so numerous that I could fill a book with them. I will give you a few because I think context matters. When I was 12 and made the honor roll for the first time, my father said, "Don't get used to it." When I was 15 and was cast as the lead in the school play, he told me at dinner, in front of guests, that the drama department must have had low standards that year. When I was 17 and got into a good college on a partial scholarship, he said, "Partial, so they didn't think you were worth the full amount." I went to college 4 states away. I studied business. I worked 2 jobs. I graduated with honors and a degree that I had paid for mostly myself with loans I spent a decade paying off. My father did not come to my graduation. He said he had a prior commitment. The prior commitment was, as far as I could ever determine, a golf weekend. I built a career in marketing, slowly, then not slowly. I was good at it, genuinely good, the kind of good that comes from spending your entire childhood being told you weren't and deciding that was not going to be your story. I worked hard in a way that probably was not entirely healthy and definitely came from the wrong place, but it produced results, and the results were real regardless of the wound they came from. By the time I was 34, I had my own firm, small, 9 people, but profitable and growing and doing work I was proud of. I had a house. I had built the life, piece by piece, that my father had told me I was incapable of building. He did not know any of this. I had maintained minimal contact since college, the obligatory holiday calls, the occasional visit that I dreaded for weeks beforehand and recovered from for weeks after. I had not told him about the firm. I had not told him about the house. I had given him the outline of my life and kept the substance for myself. My mother knew more. We had developed something like a real relationship once I was out of the house and safe. The kind of relationship that had to be built carefully, quietly, around my father's gravity. She was proud of me. She told me so in phone calls when he wasn't home. I understood that this was the best she could do, and I did not punish her for it. Though I will admit it took years of therapy to get there. The Thanksgiving that changed everything was not supposed to be significant. My brother James, the elder one, who had moved back to our hometown and bought a house 3 streets from my parents, had decided to host. He invited the whole family, plus some neighbors, plus my father's college friend and his wife. 14 people total. I almost didn't go. I went through the same calculation I go through every time there is a family event. The cost of going versus the cost of not going. The not going costs less in the short term and more in the long term. The guilt, my mother's disappointment, the way my brothers would look at me at the next event. The going costs more immediately and less over time, usually, once it's over. I went. I brought my business partner, Andrea, who had agreed to come with me as what she called emotional support and backup witness. We had been friends for 11 years. She knew everything. The dinner itself was ordinary for the first 2 hours. My father held court the way he always did, telling stories that placed him at the center of events, accepting compliments, directing conversation. I sat at the far end of the table and ate my food and talked to my niece, who is 7 and obsessed with dinosaurs and is the best person at any family event. Then my father's college friend, a man named Bill, who I had met perhaps 5 times in my life, asked my father how his children were doing. My father talked about my brothers for several minutes. James, who had recently been promoted. David, who had just bought a new car. He talked about their accomplishments with the ease of a man who had been paying attention. Then Bill asked about me. I watched my father's face. A calculation happened there. I could see it. The way you can see weather changing on the horizon. And then something I did not expect. He straightened in his chair and he began to speak. He told the table about my firm. He had looked it up, apparently. I learned this later from my mother. He had found our website, read our client list, found a profile piece that a trade publication had done on me 2 years prior. He knew things about my company that I had never told him. He talked for 4 minutes. He said he was proud. He said he had always known I had it in me. He said, and this is the part that made Andrea put her hand on my arm under the table, that he had always pushed me hard because he believed in me. The table was looking at him warmly. Bill said something appreciative. My sister-in-law nodded. He had done it. He had taken 20 years of tearing me down and rewritten it in 4 minutes in front of witnesses as a father's tough love that had produced results. He was taking credit. Not just credit for my success, credit for being the reason for my success. The diminishment was now a strategy. The cruelty was now investment. I sat very still. Andrea's hand was still on my arm. I waited for him to finish. When the table's attention drifted, when Bill started to respond, when others started talking, I looked at my father directly for the first time all evening. He met my eyes. I think he expected gratitude, or at least neutrality. We had an unspoken agreement, my father and I, that the past stayed in the past as long as we were in the same room. I said, "Dad, I need to say something." The table went quiet the way tables do when a tone enters a voice that doesn't belong at a dinner. "You did not push me because you believed in me," I said. "I need you to know that I know the difference." He opened his mouth. "I'm not finished," I said. "I built everything you just described despite what you told me, not because of it. When I was 9 years old and showed you a drawing I was proud of, you told me I was the least impressive person in this family. I was 9. The table was completely silent now. My niece had stopped eating. My brother James had gone very still. "I don't need you to apologize here," I said. "I'm not doing this for an apology. I'm doing this because you just told 14 people a story about my life that isn't true. And I have spent 20 years letting you tell stories that aren't true, and I'm done. I looked at him for a moment longer. Then I said the 8 words I had been saving. I built this. You had nothing to do. Then I picked up my fork and I ate my food. Nobody spoke for what felt like a very long time. My mother was looking at her plate. My brother David had the expression of a man watching a car accident in slow motion. Andrea was looking straight ahead with the careful neutrality of someone trying very hard not to do anything. My father left the table. He went to the living room. My brother James followed him after a few minutes. Bill, to his credit, said, "Well, that was a long time coming." His wife nodded. My niece, who is 7 and does not miss things, looked at me and said, "Are you okay, Aunt Melissa?" I said yes. She went back to talking about dinosaurs. I could have kissed her. I did not stay much longer. I helped clear the table, said goodbye to everyone, hugged my mother for a long time in the kitchen. She whispered something that I will keep to myself. I will only tell you that it was enough. My father was in the living room when I left. He did not come out. I did not go in. I drove home with Andrea. We were quiet for a long time. Then she said, "How do you feel?" I thought about it honestly. "Tired," I said, "and clean, both at the same time." She nodded. That made sense to her. It made sense to me, too. I have not spoken to my father since that Thanksgiving. It has been 7 months. My mother and I talk every week. She does not ask me to call him. She does not defend what he did. She says she is working on some things of her own, which is more than she was able to say 5 years ago, and I am choosing to honor that. My brothers are navigating something that I think was a long time coming for all of them, too. James texted me 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. He said, "I should have said something a long time ago. I'm sorry I didn't." That text took some courage. I told him so. We are figuring out what comes next. The firm is doing well. We brought on 2 new clients in the months since Thanksgiving, and we're expanding to a larger office in January. I work with people I respect, and I do work I'm proud of. I sleep better than I have in years. I want to tell you something I have told very few people. In the weeks after Thanksgiving, after the adrenaline faded and the exhaustion set in, I had a few nights where I questioned myself, where I wondered if I had been too harsh, if I had ruined a family holiday that couldn't be repaired, if I should have stayed quiet, the way I had always stayed quiet. My therapist asked me a question during one of those nights. She asked, "When you said those words, when you said you built this and he had nothing to do with it, were they true?" "Yes," I said. "Then you didn't do anything wrong." That's the thing about the truth. It doesn't require permission. It doesn't need the right moment or the right audience or the other person's agreement. It is just true, and eventually the only question is whether you are going to say it. I said it at a Thanksgiving table in front of 14 people and a 7-year-old who asked if I was okay. I could have chosen a better moment. I could have chosen a private conversation, a letter, a therapist's office. Maybe I will regret the setting someday, but I will never regret the words. I built this, all of it. Every client, every employee, every late night and early morning. Every no I turned into a yes. Every person who told me I was good at this and meant it. My father had nothing to do with it. And for the first time in my life, I said so out loud, in front of witnesses, and nobody could take it back. There is something I want to tell you about the years between college and that Thanksgiving table. Because the story I just told you has a shape to it, a beginning, a confrontation, an ending. And real life does not always have that shape. There were years in the middle that were harder than the ending, and I think they matter. When I was 26 and the firm I was working for downsized and let me go, I called my mother. She was sympathetic. I did not call my father. I knew what he would say. I could hear it in my head before I even picked up the phone. The particular tone, half concern and half satisfaction, that said, "I told you so," without ever using those words. I did not call him. I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine, and I made a list of every skill I had. It was a short list at first. I had been told for so long that I didn't have much, that I had partially believed it, the way you partially believe things that are repeated loudly enough. I sat there and I made myself add to the list. I made myself be honest about what I was actually good at. The list got longer. That list was the beginning of the firm. When I was 29 and had the first version of the business running out of a one-bedroom apartment with one client and a lot of anxiety, I had a week in March where everything seemed about to collapse. The client had delayed payment. My rent was due. I had a decision to make about whether to take on a piece of work that paid well, but that I didn't believe in. I called Andrea. She came over with takeout and we sat on my floor and she said, "What would your father say right now?" I said, "He would say quit." She said, "So we do the opposite." We did the opposite. I didn't take the money I didn't believe in. I found another way. 3 months later, the first client paid and referred 2 others, and things stabilized. They were never fully stable after that. A small business is never fully stable. But they moved in the right direction, consistently, because I kept making the opposite choice from the one my father would have made for me. Andrea is the best professional decision I have ever made. She is methodical, where I am instinctive, cautious, where I am bold, and she asks the question, "But what happens if this goes wrong?" in a tone of voice that has saved us from at least 4 significant mistakes that I can identify. She was also, as I mentioned, my backup witness at Thanksgiving. She has seen the whole arc of this story. She was sitting 3 feet away when I said those 8 words. Afterward, in the car, she said something I keep returning to. She said, "You know what the hardest part of tonight was? Not the saying it. It was the years of not saying it. That's what costs you. The silence." She was right. That is what I want to say to you, if you are somewhere in the middle of your own version of this. If you are 26 years old, losing a job, and not calling your father because you know what he will say. Or 29 years old, sitting on an apartment floor making a list of your skills to remind yourself you have them. The silence is what costs you, not the confrontation. The confrontation is one evening at one table. The silence is every day before it. I am not telling you to have your confrontation at a family dinner. I am not telling you to say your 8 words in front of 14 people. That was my situation, my moment, my choice, and I do not recommend it as a strategy. What I am saying is, the truth in your chest belongs to you. Whatever you do with it, it belongs to you. You are allowed to know it even if you never say it out loud. You are allowed to build your life based on it without his permission. My father spent 20 years trying to tell me who I was. I spent 20 years knowing differently, and then, at one table, saying so. The firm has 9 employees now. We are moving to a bigger office in January. We have clients I am genuinely proud to work with and work I believe in. I make decisions every day that my father told me I was incapable of making. I make them well. I am not telling you this to brag. I am telling you this because I want you to understand something that took me a very long time to understand myself. The people who tell you that you are not enough are not authorities. They are not oracles. They are not in possession of some truth about you that you don't have access to. They are people, flawed, limited, sometimes frightened people, who are telling you a story about yourself that serves something in them. That story is not yours. You do not have to live inside it. I lived inside it for 20 years. I built my way out brick by brick in spite of it. And then one evening, I turned around and said so. He had nothing to do with it. Neither did the doubt. Neither did the years of being told I was less. What had something to do with it was the list I made at 26. The floor I sat on at 29. The friend who said, "We do the opposite." The work daily and unspectacular and mine. You build what you build. It belongs to you. All of it. If this story hit you somewhere deep, if someone in your life has been taking credit for your survival, you are not alone. Subscribe, because every story on this channel is real, it is raw, and it is worth your time. Drop a comment and tell me where in the world you're watching from. I read every single one.